to Client-Side Web Development, Lesson 12. Today we're going to be discussing creating layouts using some modern CSS techniques. So what we're going to cover today is how we're going to show you how fixed layouts work, kind of do a comparison between fixed layouts, liquid layouts. Then we'll look at fixed liquid hybrid, how you do that, how to create a flexible box layout, and how to use CSS grids. So getting ready to do a page layout. So the box model was covered in previous chapters, so I'm not going to go back into that. But we're going to look at progressive enhancement, and this is the idea that you should start by creating web pages with the minimum required work and then enhance them with design and interactivity elements. So it's almost like a progressive design. You want to also always separate your structure from the design and the interactivity. So the goal is to create web pages where the HTML holds only the structure and content and the CSS holds the design. So that's why we have these separate style.css files to hold the CSS. The other thing, because of the rise of mobile devices, it's important. One philosophy is to put mobile design first. So you assume that the users will be viewing your site on mobile first, and you should take that into consideration when you're designing your site. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is understanding what a fixed layout is. So first, I'm going to just show you an example of fixed layout. Now here you notice that the layout gets cut off at a certain point. So now everything's shorter here. And compare this, if I go back here, you notice, especially you notice it on the menu item. The menu item goes all the way to the end. And when we go to fix, now everything is kind of truncated because now it's fixed. So what does that look like in our web page? So here's the fixed HTML file. And one thing you'll notice is we created a fixed class that we got to use to give it that fixed width size. And it's the fixed class is actually a pretty simple rule. All it does is it sets a certain size for your the width of your page, and then it cuts it off at that point. So here with the fixed width, we set it to 1024 pixels. So that sets the whole page. So when we flip back here, this width is 1024 and it won't go beyond that. That's a fixed width. Now the problem with fixed width, as you'll see, is when we go to resize this and shrink it, you start losing content because it's fixed and it goes off the page, which is okay for desktops because most of them are 1024. But when you get into mobile, this doesn't work very well because then you won't, on a mobile device, you'll be missing parts of your screen. So it's not a very mobile friendly design. All right, so like I said, the key to this is to set to create a div that kind of encapsulates everything, and then you set the styling for that div, whatever styling you do, and that's how pretty much all of these are going to work going forward. All right, the next layout we're going to look at is the liquid layout. So let's go ahead and just show you kind of what it looks like. This one's more mobile friendly because, as you can see, compared to the last one we had, this one we can actually shrink. So if I grab this and shrink it, Notice it shrinks down to fit to like kind of a mobile. So you can think of this as kind of like you're on a phone with a very with a smaller width, and you can fairly see it. I don't like the way the menu came out, but there's things you can do to fix that, which we'll talk about later in a mobile device. But as you can see, it's definitely the liquid is a lot more adaptable to the device that you're on. And that's the whole point of the liquid layout, is for it to adapt. Okay, sometimes you want to do like a fixed liquid hybrid. So let's go ahead and show. The other thing about, let me go back to liquid that I want to show you is if we look at the liquid, which is this one, what did we change? Now, the div that we used to encapsulate our page, the class is different, it's liquid. So if we look over here to see what we did, notice the difference between the fixed and the liquid. The fixed was a fixed pixel, size pixel, and the liquid, we give it a percentage. So it always sets the size of the page based on the percentage of the page. So here the percentage we set 100%. So depending on what the size of the browser window is, it's going to set the size of the display area to match the browser. And you do that by putting it 100%. Okay, so that takes us back to, oops, sorry. Yeah, there you go. Okay, that takes us back to the fixed liquid. And this is a little bit different because here with the fixed liquid, what you have is you're going to have certain parts of it be liquid, like you're going to have your menu item be liquid. But when you get down to this content area, this is fixed. So you're going to have a part of it that's fixed and a part of it that's liquid. And the way you do that, if we go back to our, let's say, fixed liquid here, and look at our layout, it's laid out in two ways. We have a div, an overall div that's called fixed liquid. And then the parts that we want fixed, we just give it the fixed styling so that those parts stay fixed to a certain width. So that's pretty much how you do kind of that hybrid. And there's times where that makes sense. All right, so that's the fixed liquid. Let's go back here. There are other type of displays that you can do. You can actually fix it so that your display works kind of like a table. So you give certain elements, have it display like you would a table. So you have where you have rows and columns. You can actually set up your display to work like a table. And let me show you how that's done. So we'll do the display table here. So what we've done here is we've kind of created these divs, but we've set up the styling to be like tables. So we have a table class, a table row, table cell, and then we also create these little paragraph cells. And what that gives you is it gives you the ability to do a look. I'm going to stretch this out a bit more so you can see it better. So if we go to the display table here, you can see now this looks more like a table, right? So you have like a row here with certain columns, and it lets you organize things again more like a table. So what does the CSS look? So here's the HTML, and you see the classes. You start arranging it in rows and in cells within the rows. And your CSS is actually pretty simple. Is There's just different displays. So for the table, you want to say, hey, display this like a table. And then to mark the rows, you would give it the table row style, but the rule is just to display this table row. And the same thing for the cell, the display is table cell, and then that makes the individual elements act like a cell rather than how they would normally act. The last thing I did is for each paragraph, I just set a margin of 10x, and what that allowed here is it adds some little extra spacing in between each paragraph. When I had it before without that, there was no spacing, and one paragraph would kind of blend to the next, and it just didn't look very nice. So I added that extra layout to each of the paragraphs just so it gets this extra spacing here. Okay, so that's the display table. And again, there's you can do group rows, header group, and footer. So you can experiment with that if you want on your own. But the main ones that you need to know about are the table row, cell, and table column too. Because you can have it also display like a column element if you want to. But honestly, if you saw in my example, all you really needed was table row, and table cell. And that would give you that kind of table-like organization that you can add. Okay, the next one is the CSS Flexible Box Layout module. So here what you do is you set the display to flex, and then it gives you the flexible box capability. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like in our CSS. So I'm going to go to our flexible box. And what that gives you is you can see with the flexible box is responsive. So as you can see, it does automatically lay everything out in a flexible manner. So let's see what the HTML looks like. So let's go back here. We'll go to our flexible box HTML here. And basically what I did here is I split it out into two different classes. I have a flex class and a flex row class. You can see the flex row class. It's a little different. This is the flex class up here. So it's this this heading and this paragraph works this way, and the flex row, you can see the flex row actually works a lot like a column. So if I shrink, the flex just shrinks all the way down, but the row makes this act like a row, almost like a row in a table. Similar to that, but the controls are a little different because now you can see the with the table each cell was equally spaced, where here the cells aren't equally spaced. So that's one big difference that you have there. So let me go back here. Let's explore the CSS for the flex and the flex row. Okay, so with the flex, what we did is we said, hey, let's display this as flex, but the direction will be a column direction. So what that gives you is, because it's a column direction, each element in the box takes up an entire row. So that's why it doesn't collapse down. So it just takes an entire row and it's responsive. If we go back here with the flex row, the flex direction is a row, so everything is kind of pushed out to the right as you add more items, because here you're seeing you're adding items from top to bottom. It actually spreads it out in separate rows, which is what you're seeing here. So you have each item gets kind of placed next to each other. Okay, so that's the flex box. And we talked about do Flexbox. You saw that there was row items and column items. And again, row items are laid out left to right, column items top to bottom. So that's another way of organizing your layout. And also you have you can change the wrap on different elements in the Flexbox layout. And these you can experiment on your own to see what these do. And you can also justify content, center it. So it does they do give you a lot of different rules so that you can manage your individual elements inside of inside of the Flex layout, the Flexbox layout. And also it gives you a lot of rules that allow you to align those items also. Yep, and then more alignment stuff here. Okay, oh, you can also change the order. There's an order rule to the Flex items that allows you to change the order that they appear. So you can specify the order in CSS if you like. Okay, again, all these I don't go through an example, but you can play around with these with that Flex property, with the Flex layout, Flexbox layout. All right, the final layout we're going to look at today is going to be the grid layout. So let's go ahead over here, see what it looks like. And again, there's two different ways you can lay out your grid. You can do a grid column layout, as you see here, or you can do a grid row layout. So you can lay everything out in separate rows. So here the columns are laid out in separate rows. Here they're laid out in columns. I mean, the paragraphs are laid out in different ways. Here they're laid out in columns. Here they're laid out in rows. So what does that look like in our CSS? So if we look at the grid layout. Now notice these divs are exactly the same. They actually have the same paragraph. I just copied these. One to just show the grid column and one to show the grid row. So I just apply the class style to the div that it's in, and the layout underneath uses the grid column and the grid row. So let's look at grid. Now the nice thing about this is you can use what's called template columns to tell it how many to have, right? So here in this first one, I say display grid, so that gives it the grid layout. And then this grid template columns is what separates it and say, hey, I want this to be separated out into 3 columns at a time. So as you add content, it automatically drops it into 3 columns at a time. So just to give you an example here, I can go into my grid layout and I can go ahead and add an extra column. And now if I look at the change, because I told it I wanted 3 columns, as I add more content, it just fills it, it just goes over and creates a new row and starts dropping things. Again, it's just like a grid, right? So as I keep adding context, as I keep adding paragraphs, it's going to keep adding it until it runs out of that template which says 3 columns, and then it moves it on. Now the grid row is similar in where it's going to put grid template rows, but because this is rows, I don't think it matters much because it's just going to keep adding things to another. It may create another row, but it's just going to, I think it's just going to keep adding it to the bottom. I don't think there's going to be much difference with this one. So let's go ahead and add this. A 4th one, yeah, it really, It's more when you have the column that you see the difference where it kind of starts spilling over and creates a new row. But the column, it just adds things from top to bottom. So so it's more useful in a grid column layout than a row layout, as you see here. Okay, so I think that's the end of the lesson 12 video. Thanks for joining me, and we will talk again at some other point.